Hi. Now, I was in a music store the other day and a young lad came in while I was there, went up to the counter and asked for a set of guitar strings for an electric guitar. And the guy behind the counter asked him, what gauge do you want? And immediately the kid sort of like took on the look of a rabbit caught in the headlights. Didn't have a clue what the question even meant, never mind what the answer might be. So I took a little bit of verbal to and fro before the guy behind the counter sort of like settled on what gauge strings the lad wanted. And when we talk about string gauges, what we mean is how thick the strings are. And it's a really fundamental concept. It's important that you get the right gauge of string for your guitar. Now, there's nothing that says a guitar is made for a particular gauge of strings. You can put pretty much any gauge of string within reason on any guitar, but you need sometimes to make a few adjustments to the way the guitar's set up. Okay, I'll explain. String gauge is measured typically in thousandths of an inch. So these strings that I've got here are what we call a set of 9 to 42s. So the top string is 9 thousandths of an inch diameter, and the bottom E string is 42 thousandths of an inch in diameter. And the exact measurements are 9, 11, 16, 24, 32, 42 thousandths of an inch. And there's a few factors that affect the pitch that a string vibrates at and sounds when it's being picked. One of which you already know is the length, because it's a long string here, shorter string, higher pitch. Yeah. But you also know that if you take a string and you make it tighter, it goes up in pitch. If you make it slacker, it goes down in pitch. Now, another factor that affects all of this is the actual thickness of the string itself. The thicker the string, the more tension it needs to achieve the same note as a thinner string. Okay, so that's why the top strings are made of thinner metal and the thicker strings down here for the lower notes. Okay, so if you think about it, you've got a B and an E string here. If you were to want to tune that B string, which is thicker, all the way up to E, you'd have to make it an awful lot tighter. Yep. So when we talk about string gauges affecting the way that the guitar plays, it's all about how much tension you need in the string to get up to pitch. As I said, these are set of 9 to 42s. It's quite comfortable, the sort of tension on here that I can get away with. I do quite a lot of bending, so that the way they feel, the amount of tension in that string when it's at pitch, it feels about right for me for doing string bending. If I had a heavier gauge string on there, I'd need to have the strings tighter to get to the same pitch, which means it would be harder to bend up. I wouldn't find it as comfortable. Conversely, I could use a lighter gauge string, something thinner. That would be much easier to bend because there'd be less tension in there to get the strings to the same pitch. The downside of that is twofold. Firstly, the strings tend to be a bit thinner, so they're more likely to break. And secondly, the amount of metal in the string, the thickness of the string, affects the sound quite a bit as well. Now, I'd find it going down to something like a set of like 8 to 38 on the bottom. It's just a bit too light for me. I like the 9 to 42s. Some people find the 9s are a little bit light. Personally, they're fine for me, and they're pretty much the mainstream sort of string gauge. Also, I always make sure the guitar is generally in pretty good condition. It's well maintained. There's no sharp edges here on the bridge or the saddles, or the nut, anything that's likely to cause any stress to the strings and make them break prematurely. Other guitarists like a heavier string, going down a gauge, say like to 10 to 46, isn't uncommon. Their strings are a bit tighter, maybe it's not so comfortable for bending, but you've got more metal there, so you actually get a heavier sound. Literally, a heavier string will give you a heavier, more full sound. As I say, the amount of tension that you get in the string to bring the string up to pitch varies with the thickness, with the gauge of the string. So if you've currently got your guitar set up with something like a set of 9s like this, and then you decide you want to try something heavier like a set of 10 to 46s, what will happen is when you bring the guitar up to pitch and you tune everything in, it's putting a lot more tension along the strings, and the neck can actually start to curve, actually get like a bow on that way, and within the neck will either be adjustable from the headstock end or from down here at the body end. There's a metal rod inside that you can tighten or slacken to compensate for the tension in the strings. So it's always important, if you go up or down a gauge with your strings, you probably need to make some sort of adjustment to that truss rod thing inside the neck to make sure that the neck's correctly balanced against the tension in the strings. If you're not comfortable about doing something like that, get your local guitar repairer to do it, because you can, if you get a bit overzealous, you can damage the neck. You don't need a whole lot of turn on that truss rod to make a difference to the way that the neck bows or flexes. If you have a tremolo system, particularly if you've got something like this, like a Floyd Rose or some sort of locking type trem, obviously the springs inside the body that balance the tension on the strings. So if you go to a heavier gauge or a lighter gauge than you normally use, the trem's going to go up or down accordingly. You'll need to adjust the springs inside, maybe add or take a spring away to make sure that this tremolo is balanced against the tension of the strings. It's doable. Sometimes it's a bit fiddly, but you know, if you're finding that the sound you're getting or the feel you're getting isn't quite what you want, it's worth changing the string gauge and having a bit of pain and messing around with truss rods and tremolos and so on to get the guitar playing right, if it gives you something that just feels comfortable all the time that you play it. Now, another way you can exploit heavier gauge strings is if you're into detuning, and this is something that a lot of the heavy rock and the metal guys will do, is get a heavier gauge of string than normal, but rather than tuning it up to an E sort of tuning, tune everything down a couple of semitones. So your guitar, like in normal open tuning, would be D, G, C, F, A and D. A couple of semitones lower, so there's not so much tension in the string, but because the string is heavier, thicker string, it'll actually end up with a similar sort of tension that you would have with a set of 9 to 42s tuned up to a normal pitch. Now there's lots of experimentation you can do, combining different gauges, you know, trying like a thinner gauge on top, going down to something heavier than you would normally get. So like this set goes from a 9 on the top down to a 42 on the bottom. You could experiment and try going down, getting a little bit thicker, down to something like 46 on the bottom. Now that difference between 46 thousandths of an inch and 42 thousandths of an inch doesn't sound like much, but in terms of playability and tone and so on, it can actually make quite a difference. So experiment if you want with your string gauges, and think about how the guitar feels for you. You know, does it feel a bit slack? Does it feel too tight? You know, if you're doing string bends, is the guitar not forgiving enough? You know, if you're snapping strings a lot, think about how your guitar's set up, make sure there's no sharp edges down there on the bridge or anything. But if you're using a really light gauge of string, if you're maybe using a set of 8s and you're really whacking the heck out the strings when you're playing rhythm parts, that's probably not the string gauge for you. You probably want to go to something a little bit heavier, that it's going to have a bit more strength and fight back a bit more when you're hitting the strings. The important thing is that you know what gauge string you use. So if you go into the music store and say, I want a set of strings, and the guy says what gauge, you can say, I want 9 to 42s or I want 10 to 46s. You know, you're not stood there like the rabbit in the headlights, not knowing what it is that you need. Like I said, there's no rule that says your particular guitar is made or fitted for a particular string gauge. You can change them if you want, but you need to make sure that the guitar's set up to compensate for the string the tension that comes with the particular gauge of string. Okay, so I hope you found that useful, informative, and I'll catch up with you in another video soon. Bye for now.